Indy authors in the seat of fame, tales of adventure or love untamed, writers who deserve more acclaim, sharing their stories, joys and pain. Eclectic goat asks, what's your dream? Chat asks questions as they stream. A clucky quest through the unforeseen, authors laughing, eyes agleam.
Good evening, everyone. How is everyone today? I was getting a little bit concerned initially because Platoon decided he was going to stream over my usual time slot, but I am very, very, very happy to see all of you. I am here with my guest, Thom Tate. Full disclosure, I have done a little bit of editing for him in the past, so I'm pretty familiar with his work. And Eraserhead says, "Where else would I be?" I don't know. You might be backstage trying to figure out how to get in. So we are going to be talking tonight a little bit about Tom's writing history in general, and specifically about his new book coming up, Beyond All Measure. Hey, Wormy. I did read this one already. I was very lucky to kind of get a sneak peek. And I have to say, Tom, I think this might be my favorite book of yours that I have read so far. So I was really excited to be able to talk to you about it.
Well, good. Thank you.
If you want to do a quick little intro, and then we'll say hello to the chat and let everybody else come in and get settled and all that good sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure. Great. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I sincerely appreciate it. And I'm glad we've reconnected after so many years, so long ago when you edited some of my novellas. So thanks for that. But
I know. It was such a weird coincidence, too.
yeah, it was. It was. My name is Thom Tate, and I am a sales engineer for a software company by trade, but I love to write. I've been writing for probably 12, 13 years, something like that. And I live just a little north of Atlanta in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. So I guess you could call them the Blue Ridge Mountains too. I don't know. I have to look at a map. But anyway, that's me. And been married to be 27 years, 28 years this year, with two wonderful daughters that are in college. One's about to graduate, and one's just started at UT. So that's Tennessee. So that's me.
All right. I do want to just go through the chat really quick. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it tonight, but Farv is down with a migraine, so we all wish him well and hope he gets to catch us on the rewatch, and sending him well wishes. Rio, I think, is first to everything. It's Legatus, I think, makes Yarny's streams quicker, but man, you are always right here, and I really appreciate it. Eraserhead is, of course, the super mod when he's not, when I haven't coaxed him onto the actual live stream. Rachel, very happy to see you. I totally agree with your comment down the road. Book chat. Who can turn that down? And Byron, great to see you. And the big ship. And just think, this is not Slice and Dice, so you and Eraserhead do not have to fight about pineapple and pizza tonight. And Wormy, good to see you. Gooch! Gooch, I don't think you've ever been in here before. Good to see you. Gooch is, you have to understand, Gooch is like the norm of YouTube. He like comes in and everyone just goes, Gooch. Poor Tom is not familiar with this. Yes, we are so happy to have you. All right, so Tom, how many? I was trying to remember this. I know I had it written down somewhere. How many books have you actually had published?
I believe 5 novellas, and if I can remember them in order, it's Checkmate, spelled like Czech Republic, Czech, Meltdown, The Fourth Strike, Intercept, and then Red Storm. And then I've got 3 full-length novels that are available in paperback as well as ebooks, The Auroral Contingency, Spear Garden, and then, of course, coming April 1st, my latest, Beyond All Measure.
Okay. And I'm sorry, you said that's coming out when?
April 1st.
I mean, there's some amusement there, but. And that is currently available on pre-order through both Amazon and Barnes & Noble?
That is correct.
Byron says he's a sci-fi author and intrigued.
Very good. Well, this is more of a spy genre.
Yes, you are very, very 80s action. I think I've said this before, I always think of 80s action movies when I read your stuff. That same, like, really high energy, like I can almost hear, like, theme music in the background.
Well, I am a child of the 80s, so I was in high school from 82 to 86, and then college after that. So my entire, upper education years were in the 80s, and so yeah, that decade has a fond memory for me. So a lot of great movies came out then. So maybe that's I don't think I do it intentionally, but everybody has kind of the same comment about it. It's 80s action movie, or I can see this in my mind. It's like I'm watching a movie. A lot of people say.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask if it was an intentional or if it was an inspiration. Sounds like if it's an inspiration, it's an unintentional
Yeah,
inspiration.
it is. It really is. It's unintentional, but that's just the way it comes out. But it's hey, I guess it's a good thing. So people enjoy it. So that's good.
So now I have to ask. This was not on my original question list, but if you were to cast Blake in an '80s style, make of this, who would you want currently to play him?
Oh, I know I've told you this before, and now his name just absolutely escapes me. Um,
Have we? I don't remember that
I
conversation.
think we did. Hold on, I'll tell you exactly who it was. Uh, it's got to do a look. My friends at IMDb. Gonna go take a look here.
Chat, who is the current Schwarzenegger of the day? Who would you put in an '80s action movie if you were making it today? To do a, suave spy thriller. Submarine, spaceship, pretty much the same thing. Submarines are terrifying.
Well, of course, now I'm on IMDb and it's not giving me the cast.
I was just curious. I you don't get that same kind of what's the word I'm looking for? You don't get that same kind of like bulky build like you did in the '80s, so it's kind of a different it's a different era even for the action hero.
Yeah, I grew up a big fan of James Bond when I was growing up, and then I of course loved the Jason Bourne series, and I think I just kind of it just seemed natural to go towards that genre and that style, and I kind of play it out in my mind, and
Mm-hmm.
in whatever it is I see in my mind, that's kind of what I write put to paper.
Okay. So it is sort of visual, if not cinematic exactly. So
Correct.
I feel like everyone's gonna say the Reacher dude. I don't know who the Reacher
No,
dude is.
no, it's not the Richard dude. It is
Adam Baldwin.
Taylor Lautner. That's it.
I
But he
don't know.
needs to be bulkier. He was in Twilight. He was the werewolf in Twilight. Um,
Oh, yes.
so, and the reason why I chose him is because in my books, Blake is um, half Scottish and he's half Native American because I needed to have somebody that had that olive or dark skin, but also could grow a nice thick beard
Mm-hmm.
because being undercover and doing a lot of work in the Middle East, he needs to be able to blend in. So if he grows his beard out and he's already kind of dark skinned, and then he can make himself blend in with the people in the Middle East. So that's kind of I needed a character that had that sort of look, and so Taylor Lautner kind of had that look. So I thought, well, if once Taylor's maybe 32 or 33, if that somebody wants to make this into a movie, that's who I'd cast.
Um, so Rachel, I guess Henry Cavill is out of the running. They wouldn't let the Reacher guy on a submarine. He would use up all the oxygen. Apparently, I need to watch the Reacher because I have no idea what these references are. I
He's
think
a big guy. He's a big guy.
yeah, I have seen pictures of him. I think I made the argument once that when he was younger, he should have been cast as Peeta instead of whoever the heck was they cast for Peeta in the Hunger Games. What about the guy who was Gale? I think that was his name, Gale in the Hunger Games. He was dark complected, had that dark hair.
I'll have to look at a picture and see who that is.
Byron wants to know what about Jason Momoa?
No, he's too big.
Too big?
Yep.
Yeah, he would have a very hard time blending in anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I suppose in the movies, it's like there's a reason James Bond goes around and announces to everyone who he is because it's a movie.
Yeah. And you can't be too much of a beefy looking guy, I guess. You got to be able to blend in. And there's a guy who's got videos on YouTube, and he's a former CIA clandestine officer, and he's very unassuming. And you look like he'd be a 180-pound weakling, but he's probably the most lethal guy in the room, and very unassuming. And so that's kind of what you need to be.
Yeah. I remember somebody saying if you walk onto a military base, the guys that are the most dangerous are the ones that don't look like military guys.
Exactly. It's also kind of like security. I've been to Israel a couple times, and when you fly out of the airport, the security that you see is not the security that's watching you. There are actually heat sensing cameras behind the walls, and they can sense how nervous somebody is, and they will have somebody that comes up to you and asks you a certain set of questions, and the supervisor that's kind of walking back and forth, just kind of making them not really looking like they're doing anything. They're actually watching your body movements, and they're looking at you. They're the ones that are watching you. And then when they ask specific questions, they know people are going to be nervous in general. Your body might heat up a little bit, but these extra sensitive cameras that are behind the walls, they can sense if somebody is really super nervous for a particular reason. And it's the things that you don't see that you got to watch out for.
Interesting. Did you ever see Lie to Me?
No, I have not.
It was a show that, especially later on, they got a little extreme. But like in the early season, I think it got a little too much hate. I thought it was pretty interesting. It was one of those shows that everyone was like, "Oh, this is completely unrealistic." But then when you looked at the research behind it, the first season actually was based on real stuff. So
Oh, wow.
it just seemed really. I don't know who this person is. Martin Seinsmer? I don't know how you say that. Rachel, what's he in? Do you self-publish or do you use a publisher? Or do
I
you use
self-
one of those half publishers?
No, I do self-publish, so that's the easiest way to go, I think, and you have control over your over everything. Nobody's going to dictate to you. Obviously, the challenging thing is the marketing side, But I tried going down the traditional route, and I still do. I always query, but I think that it's just I just enjoy self-publishing better.
Mhm. Are there issues with I mean, I've never done either. I write for magazines, so, um, are there what is it about publishing? You said that you get more control over what you're doing, but
Well, again, I've never had the experience of having an actual agent or a publisher, but my understanding is a lot of times they try to change your story if they don't like certain things about it, or if they think something might be politically incorrect, they might want you to change something.
there are
Um,
definitely a lot of check boxes these days. I think book
yeah,
publishers are going the same way as movies in a lot of ways.
yeah, yeah. So, um, I guess that's kind of what it is. I don't have to change anything. I have made a few changes. I mean, like I rewrote Spear Garden last year.
Mhm.
That was my first novel. I wrote it in 6 weeks, and then
Wow.
I thought, you know what, I need this to be perfect, and I need to have people have an interest in my characters. So then I wrote all five of my novellas before I published Spear Garden, and so I waited like 4.5 years after I wrote Spear Garden before I finally published it. And then my writing style changed. And so I spent 18 months and rewrote it again and then just republished it last year.
Mhm. How long did it take you to write this one?
7 years. There was a huge break in between. So this one was really kind of odd. This one started off to be a continuation of Spear Garden, and it was going to be my main character Blake MacKay retaliating for something bad that happened to him in Spear Garden, and the name of the book was going to be Retaliate. But then it just kind of took on a life of its own. When I write, things come to me and it's like, oh, you're going to go there, huh? Okay, well, we'll go down that road. And so we go down that road, and then so the story kind of twisted and morphed. I thought, like, this isn't going to work for a Retaliate. It's not going to work. So then I changed the name to Deep Rising. I thought, okay, that's cool. This kind of makes sense because when you understand the premise of the story and what happens, it's like that kind of makes sense. But I have a very good friend of mine who's an actor over in Scotland, and he kept showing me all these movies called Deep Rising and this Deep Rising and that Deep Rising. And he's like, told me it doesn't make sense. I'm like, okay. So,
I I think I remember us having that conversation. I think
yeah,
we were talking at that point, yeah.
yeah. And so I thought, okay, I have no idea. And so then I was writing a conversation um, of dialect in one close to the end of the book, and this guy says we have to do this beyond all measure. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's kind of where came the name of this book. But yeah, I started it in I think 2017, and started it. Probably wrote the first 5 or 6 chapters, and then just I came to just an absolute dead stop. I don't know if it was writer's block or if it was, hey, I've got other things going on in my life block or a combination of the two, and just didn't really write for a while. And
Mhm.
then I got back on a critique site that I joined, and I'll talk about that in a little bit if you want to. But and so I met this gentleman from um, Belgium, and he asked me if I'd critique one of his chapters for him, and so I did. And when I critique others' work, I think when you become a writer, you've got to learn how to have thick skin, because if you don't have thick skin, the first time you get a bad review, you're just gonna freak. So you need to have people that are just shredding you and telling you your work sucks and it's stupid, and take the constructive criticism. Well, what would you do differently? And so I
I
shredded this guy's chapter. Go
I
ahead.
I would say that there is a difference between, constructive criticism and your work sucks.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but so I critiqued this guy's chapter, and I was just ripping it, and I was like,
Did you make him
no,
cry?
no, but he sent me a private message, and he said, will you please critique these chapters for me, because nobody else critique my work like you did, and you made me see the light." I was like, "Sure." And then I said, "Will you critique one of my chapters?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And so we just started going back and forth. And then we we developed this relationship where we came off of the website. We just worked with each other. We set up chat. We set up uh, encrypted email back and forth. We literally we talk. We have talked almost every single day over email and chat for the last almost 3 years now. And he did, he edited all my work. We used AutoCrit. We used some other software to critique everything. He had some people in England and in Australia that they kind of were alpha readers as well, and somewhat editors. And so we just developed this great relationship where we go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he's written some phenomenal stories. Um, and just it ended up being a great relationship. And so he's the one that really kind of, you're going to finish this book, you're going to finish this book, you're going to finish this book. And we did. But yeah, actually, before that, he's the one that helped me rewrite Spirit Garden. And
Mm-hmm.
then he also said, "This novella of yours, Red Storm," he said, "that's a novel. You need to make that a novel." And I was like, "I don't know." And so I stretched it out and more than doubled it. And then that ended up becoming the Royal Contingency. And then I finished writing Beyond All Measure. And so just as,
Oh, so it took you 7 years because there were a whole bunch of projects in between.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, probably about 4 of those years, I just stopped writing. I had just too much going on in my life with two
Mm-hmm.
girls, going in from high school into college. One of my daughters is a student athlete. She plays lacrosse. I coach lacrosse for a university club team. So there's just a lot of stuff going on. So it was really kind of on the back burner. But meeting up with him is what really kind of sparked it to get me going again.
Yeah, that's it's really important to have someone like that. I mean, I like I said, I write for magazines, and I've, twice now started to do a long form project. And it is so easy if you don't have that kind of support for other stuff to just get in the way.
Hmm.
Um, and it's very frustrating. I mean, I don't even have children. I have goats. Um, but it's one of those things they say, when you work at home, the hardest part at working at home is that convincing people that you're working and that you don't have time to answer the phone or run errands or and I think writing is really the same way. It's very difficult to get people to understand that when you say I need to go write, you need to go write. Um and it's really important to have somebody who will critique honestly.
Hmm.
Um as you know, I do some editing, and you either get people who are very afraid that you're going to try and change their story on them, um, and don't necessarily see the value in somebody just doing grammar and saying, "Oh, by the way, there's an inconsistency between chapter 1 and chapter 51." Um, but publishers have given editors a really terrible rap. So, um So yeah, it's really awesome to be able to have that kind of person to do that. My my nonfiction writing, of course, goes through like two different editors before it ever gets published. But if I ever wanted to write something, there everybody wants to be really nice to you. Yeah, Farva saying getting a full time editor is really hard.
Yeah, it's and the site that I'm talking about that I went to is called Critique Circle, and it's if you're a new writer, it's really a great place to get started. And the way that it works is it works off of a point system. So you go in and you pick somebody's chapter that they've written, and then you can critique it. And then based on your critiques, you will get like 1, 2, or 3 points.
Hmm.
People can gift you more points if they like it or whatever. And then once you get so many points, then you can submit your own work. And so you really see a lot of different styles. Um, and then eventually, when people start critiquing your work and they start pointing out your mistakes, you start seeing all of a sudden those mistakes in other people's work, and then you can kind of point those out. And it is amazing how your style changes and improves over time. I When I originally wrote Spear Garden, I took the original copy, and this is before I actually registered it, copywrote it. But I took the original copy, shoved it in an envelope, sealed it, and mailed it to myself. And I still have that sealed manuscript in my drawer. And someday I'm going to get it out and read it and just see how horrible it is, because it's probably just horrific, even though it was edited and everything. But the style's completely changed. So that's why I kind of rewrote it, and that's why I rewrote um, Intercept, which is one of the only the only one of my 5 novellas that you can still get. Um, I rewrote it. The other 4, well, Red Storm I turned into the Royal Contingency, but Checkmate, Meltdown, and the Fourth Strike, those are all going to be rewritten and combined into my next novel, which is going to be a prequel to all of the other ones, and it's going to be called Who is Blake MacKay? And it kind of
Mhm.
shows you where he gets his start, and it takes you on multiple different missions that he goes on, and then I'll probably add some more to it.
That's really cool. Um, yeah, I totally agree with you. So first of all, with videos, the first piece of advice I got on making YouTube videos was if a year or two from now you don't watch your first video and hate it, then you haven't improved. And
Yeah,
and
I can believe
that's
that.
and that's where something's wrong.
Mhm.
Like if you don't listen to your first video and cringe. um but I it's very true about your style changing. So I used to be terribly guilty of using the word that far
Oh
too
yeah.
frequently.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so now I notice so much when other people do it. I was never terrible about using too many adjectives, but I was terrible about using adverbs I didn't need.
Mhm.
And so I'm catching those is something that I picked up on because other people helped me with it. So they not only helped me become a better writer, they helped me become a better editor. So,
Yeah, there is a tool that I use. It's called Find and Highlight, and you can create various lists of different words, whether it's adverbs or whatever it is, and it'll go in and it'll highlight those words in your story. And that is one that I just can't seem to get away from. I'll say highlight everything that's that up and down in bright green, and it'll also it'll come up with 72 that ups and downs, and you're like, oh my god. So then you go through it.
mhm.
Most of the time you can just eliminate the word and it still reads just fine. Um, but now, instead of being like 72 in a single chapter, it might be 17. So I'm subconsciously I've eliminated those words from my vocabulary when I'm writing, which is great.
Yeah. Uh, are there other things that you've noticed have changed over time?
Yeah, I don't use dialogue tags anymore. I've almost completely eliminated them. Whereas before it was he said, she said, he said this, he questioned. I just don't use them anymore. Period. I give some kind of an action, whether he's smoking a cigarette or exhaling or wiping his brow or whatever. I use that to show who's actually um, doing the talking. I do a lot of show versus tell. That's a big pet peeve of mine. I hate it when people tell me something, which is show me so I can see it.
Um, it's uh, the thing I notice is so first of all, if you have two people talking and they're just rhythmically going back and forth, you don't need tags anyway. I mean, you don't really even need motion. The
Mm-mm.
thing I've noticed is people that don't want to keep using he said, she said, and so they will like get out the thesaurus.
Mhm.
And he spoke, he
Yeah,
mused, he
yeah.
um and it kind of entertains me.
Yeah, it's like you're still doing the same thing. But
um So a lot of people are kind of talking in the chat about things they've discovered about their own writing style. Rachel says hers is too flowery. I was told early on mine was too much like it was taking place in a dream, which made sense because most of my writing ideas originally came from like bad dreams I had. And so becoming more grounded was a really important thing for me. But the only way you learn is writing more, right?
Mhm.
Would you agree?
100%.
Um, there's many things going on in the in the chat now about writing styles. So, how did you come to like just sit down one day? We were talking about how hard it is to find time to write. How did you just wake up one day and say, "All right, today's the day I'm gonna sit down and
So,
write a book"?
I was, yeah, so I was working for a software company that was looking to be sold to a French company, and I came to work with this company. They acquired the company that I worked at before, and so I was the guru on the software that they bought. Um, but then there was the last in first out, so they needed to make the bottom line look a little better, so they started getting rid of people. So I lost my job, and so my new job was find a new job. So you're sitting in front of a computer all day, you're looking and blah blah blah, and you just get bored. So you just start doing other things. So I went to YouTube, kill a few minutes, and I came across this channel, and it was basically a replay of a show that's on. I don't remember if it was on History or whatever, but it was called Future Weapons, and there was an old Navy SEAL by the name of Mac Makowitz who hosted it, and he was demonstrating this weapon called Metal Storm, and it just was like ridiculous. The technology, instead of using a firing pin and explosives, it used electricity, and there were no shell casings. And so you could make these metal storm weapons could fire at a rate up to 1 million rounds per minute. Now, obviously, you can't have a million rounds in there, but if you could put a million rounds in here, it would fire them all in a minute. And it went all the way up to 40 millimeter grenades, and the 40 millimeter grenades could fire at a rate of 250,000 rounds per minute. And I thought, man, this thing is incredible. I had demonstrations, and you could set up these kill zones. So if anybody came into that kill zone and they didn't have a certain RFID tag on them, they would just fire away and blow you to smithereens. And I thought, man, that would be like a really cool super weapon, um, to be like in a James Bond movie or a Vince Flynn book or something. Somebody ought to write that. And so I thought, well, nobody is, and I don't have a job, so I guess I will. And so I just literally never written it. I have written before, but it was technical manuals for a CRM tool, so nothing exciting. So I just started writing, and I literally banged it out, 100,000 words in 6 weeks. And so that's how I got started.
Did you ever do the November? I can't remember what it's called. The November writing challenge there to get 100,000 words done in November.
I've not done that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember what the word count is. But I always thought it sounded insane because I couldn't imagine writing that many
Yeah, that would be
words.
insane.
But it's well the trick is you're not supposed to edit or anything. You're
Ah,
literally just supposed to bang it out. And it's designed for people like me who need external deadlines.
mm,
Um, and they're like, if you did X number a week and X number a day and X number an hour, um, and it might be 10,000 or something. I can't remember exactly what it is, but the idea is just for people to kind of get moving. And I'm really impressed because I find that when I don't have enough contracts under my belt, I'm less productive and I'm less likely to write. It always becomes like, I'll do it tomorrow.
yeah, yeah. The Beyond All Measure was just the opposite of Spear Garden, because Spear Garden was, like I said, 100,000 words in 6 weeks, and I was done. Didn't I didn't know anything about editing. I had no clue. Whereas Beyond All Measure is I'm writing a chapter, and then I'm going to send it off to Henry, and he's going to shred it, and then I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to send it back to him, and then he's going to send it off to Holly in the UK, and then she's going to make suggestions, and I'll work on just that one chapter. I might start the next chapter, but for the most part, I kind of want to work on that chapter till I'm 95% done with it, and I'm happy with it, and then once I get done with all the chapters, we'll throw it all together, and then we'll run through it again, and then I'll get alpha readers like you that came along and just said, this timeline's jacked up. It's like, you're right. Thank you.
Tiny monotonous details are what I excel at.
Exactly. There's stuff that you just miss. I mean, like Henry, he sent me this is my writing partner in Belgium. He's writing this wonderful story right now, and he's talking about they pulled out a bottle of cognac, or excuse me, a bottle of brandy, and he keeps mentioning and sipped his brandy. Then all of a sudden it turned into cognac. I'm like, that's pretty cool how you did that. Did you mean to do that? And he's like, shit, no matter. Thanks. I never would have found that. So it's just little tiny things that an extra set of eyes sees. That's all. That's a lot of help.
I tell people that all the time, that it is not a sign of a bad writer to need a second set of eyes or an editor. It's the fact that what's in your head is not necessarily what made it onto the paper.
That is true. That is true. Because there's times where I'm thinking I said this, and that's not really what made it out onto the paper. And when it's finally highlighted, and it's like, oh my gosh, how did that happen?
Yeah. And I mean, it's one thing if, Harry turns into Steve. It's quite another if, you're something like a timeline, over the course of 300 pages.
Mhm.
That's, especially if when you're looking at different time zones, that's a real hard thing to keep track of.
Yeah, that is one thing that's been difficult because my book takes place all over the world in multiple different time zones, and this last one was at the North Pole, and it's like, okay, what time is it at the North Pole? What time zone do they go by? And so that's why at the beginning of all my chapters, so you can kind of get an idea, I always put I put the time it is locally and then the UTC time, so you always know kind of around what's going on.
Yeah. And it's also one of those things that I am notorious for saying, well, it was in my head this way. How come it didn't come out that way? How come other people don't know what I was thinking?
Yeah, it's like, why don't you understand that? It's perfectly clear to me.
Yeah. Because we wrote it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree, Farv. It's difficult blending things and perceptions in a way that, and not necessarily even that people are going to enjoy, because people love fantasy and sci-fi, but in a way that people are going to understand. Translating a story from your own head to paper is very, very difficult.
Yeah, probably one of the biggest challenges for me is, some of the things that I've got in my books, some people just like that can't be real, but I try to be as realistic as possible, but also throw in a little bit of high tech here and there. But for the
Hmm.
most part, I try to be really accurate. Like when I'm all these different places, like there's a car chase in Bergen, Norway, in Beyond All Measure. I got on Google Earth and I drove those roads on Google Earth all up and down on the entire car chase. I drove those roads. I made descriptions based on exactly what I saw. So you'd think that I actually drove down through Bergen, Norway. And it's kind of fun to do that too.
That's a great
Um,
way to research that.
yeah, it is. And I have a fear of somebody reading it that can call BS. And so one of my novellas, The Fourth Strike, it takes place on submarines, and I sought out and I found several retired submariners, and I'm like, can you please read this and tell me if it's BS or not, and tell me any corrections. Be as harsh on me as you possibly can. And they came back and they said, okay, this is how you do this is not right, this is the terminology we use, and made all kinds of corrections. And then the reward for that was a review that I got with somebody who was a former submariner that said, I appreciate the author's research because this is very real, it could happen. And I loved it.
Um, I had another question I was going to ask. Oh, what authors inspire you to get?
Uh, I'm always a huge Vince Flynn fan, Brad Thor, Neil Gaiman. Um, he started off as a graphic novelist, and so his works are very descriptive, and so he had a really big influence on me. And then Steve Alton. I don't know if anybody's familiar with him, but he's the guy that wrote the Meg with all the Megalodon movies and everything. He wrote the Meg, but he also wrote a book called The Loch about the Loch Ness monster, and he's very descriptive as well. And so I'd say those four were probably the biggest influence on me.
I I'm not sure I knew the Meg was anything other than a movie, so that's
No, yeah,
interesting to know.
the books are better.
Uh, Look, I have an entire video series called "The Book Is Better" specifically for that
Yeah,
purpose. Just want to say a quick shout out and hello to JJ. Welcome. Yeah, consistency is really hard. Far as talking about his concern about keeping up with consistency and not having issues in his stories. So, what was the last book you read?
you know what? I don't know. It's I guess well, it would have to be one of my writing partner's books. Would be the last book that I read because
Hmm.
but it hadn't been published yet though. But it was called Amnesia, um, and well, actually, you know what? There was Sanctuary and Shadows. That was another book that I read that's by Henry Martin, my writing partner, and I think that's available on. I think it's on Amazon, but it might be only on Amazon Belgium. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
But yeah, so those I do have a recent Brad Thor book, but I haven't dove into it yet. I've been meaning to.
Yeah, I try really hard to make sure that I find time to read because that's another thing that's really hard to do when everything is up in the air.
Hmm.
Um, oh, Rachel has read the Meg books. She says they're very good.
Yeah, very good, Rachel. You have good taste.
Um, so before we get too much further, just because I don't know how long people are going to be able to hang around, you had a little bit of an offer for the chat on your site, I believe. You want to talk about that a little bit, and we'll have Eraserhead drop a link, and then
Yeah,
we'll discuss it again at the very end for anybody who missed it.
yeah. So I have a website that I talks about my books. It's called TatesCovertWorld.com. And for those that are listening in today, I've got sort of a private page. It's TatesCovertWorld.com/signed, where if you're interested, I will send you a signed copy of my new book, Beyond All Measure. And that's to be $20, and that's including shipping, so you don't have to pay extra for shipping. But then, if you're interested in all three of my novels, the Royal Contingency, Spear Garden, and Beyond All Measure, for $45, I will send you all three signed with a nice message, and shipping is included.
Just to clarify, I do have a lot of people who show up from the UK. Is this US only, or is this?
Well, free shipping is U.S. only, but there might be additional cost to post. And if they threw in like another $5, that'd be enough to make it worth my while to send it to the UK.
I'm not sure there are any currently because I'm not sure I know where everyone is from, but I do know that I do know there are a lot of UK people that tend to pop up, especially when they can't sleep because it's 5 hours later. Um, okay, so we will repeat that information. Here we go. I was going to say I know the link was here somewhere. We'll repeat that at the end for anybody who's interested, and I will put it in the description when I do the edit so that people can do the rewatch.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You mentioned that one of the things that you like about self-publishing is kind of having control over everything, and I seem to remember that when you were doing this book, there was a lot of kind of going back and forth about the cover. Have you used the same cover artist for all your books?
No. That's one thing that's been kind of a challenge, but it's actually been not. It was a challenge, but it's actually been kind of easy if I think back on it. I kind of like the same look and style, and people have been able to pretty much give me that same style. But I think I've used a different artist for every book cover I've done. So, but the guy that I used this time for Beyond All Measure, I really liked them. They did a really good job. They actually did let's say, I take that back. They did the new cover of Spear Garden, and so then I had them do the cover of Beyond All Measure.
And how do you find your cover artists?
They kind of find me, when you advertise something on Twitter or you throw something out on Facebook, Marketplace, or you run an ad or something, you got people contacting you all the time. Hey, I do covers. Hey, I do book marketing. Hey, I do this. Let me know what I can do to help you out. And so I just had I used Fiverr for the Royal Contingency, and these guys came back with a draft of a cover for the Royal Contingency, and I loved it. I actually like it better than the cover that's out there now, but I'd already contracted with this other person to do it, and I already paid her, so I didn't want to pay for two covers.
Hmm.
But they just, and they're real easy to work with. They'll go back and make whatever changes you want. They initially came up with an idea for this book, Beyond All Measure, and I had an idea in my head, and so I kind of sketched out that idea with the submarine and um, the oil rig, and they kind of brought it to life. But we went back and forth. Change this, change that. The iceberg on the left was all the way over on the right, and it was covering something up. The water line was too high. I hated the explosion on the submarine. I actually didn't like the sub they had at all. It looks sort of AI and kind of cartoony. I actually did that sub and the explosion. I made that and I sent it to them as a transparent file. I said, use this one because yours I don't like. And they're like, okay, no problem. So they were just real easy to work with.
I just wanted to give people some idea of what the full cover looked like.
Yep.
Again, this is off the pre-order page from Amazon. This channel in no way, shape, or form advocates Amazon over Barnes and Noble, but I could find it faster. Um, Weird. Am I still here? I just got a weird no connection thing and the cat walked across the keyboard.
You are still here.
Oh, excellent. Just the cat causing trouble then. No problem. um, how do you choose? I mean, if a bunch of people say, "Hey, I do covers," how do you pick one?
I'll look at um, examples of other covers that they've done, and um, when when I was actually doing Beyond All Measure, um, I had I said, give me a draft, and if I like it, I'll use you. And the person on Fiverr gave me a draft. I had one other person give me a draft, and it was horrible. And then these guys, Marquee Designs, that came back, but they came back like 2 weeks late. They were slow to begin with, and I was like,
Hmm.
I've already paid this girl. I love your cover. I love it better, but I already paid this girl, and you know, so I'm not going to do it. But I'll keep you guys in mind for the next time. And so,
It
you know,
doesn't. It doesn't tell you a whole. It tells you a whole lot about whether or not they can stick to the timeline you need to.
yeah, it does. But these guys, I told them I had sort of a rush on this one, or I had a certain date I wanted to be done by, and they met that date, so they're real good. And then they come back with some marketing stuff, some 3D images, and I told them, I said, once I start, it goes live and I get some reviews, I'd like you to throw some of the reviews on the back cover. And they're like, no problem, just send it off and tell us what you want on there, and we'll do it. So. And they do it for multiple platforms too, because you're required to have a certain template that they use on Amazon, and then another template they use for direct to digital, and then another one that they use for Ingram Spark, and he does all of them. So
Mm-hmm. Um, I I hesitate to ask this because I'm really curious, but I don't want to get too personal. Can I ask about how much you tend to pay for covers normally? Like, what's the normal price range for artists?
um, the Royal Contingency, I think I paid $100, but for Spear Garden, the remake of Spear Garden, and for Beyond the Measure, it was $200.
Okay, but you feel like the work was
Yeah, it was worth
I
it.
I do remember Beyond All Measure went back and forth, what about like 6 times or something like that?
I think even more than that, probably 10.
Wow. Okay, so
And they made it a completely different initial design, and I'm like, nope, scrap it. I want a sub that's blowing up, and you know why.
mhm.
And with this and that and the other, and they brought it to life.
So, definitely $200 worth of work then.
Yep, yep.
About what was your timeline to get that completed?
I think about 3 weeks.
Oh, wow. So 10 redos in 3 weeks isn't bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I would say so. There's sometimes I'd say I need this change, and literally 5 minutes later it'd be back. Sometimes it'd be a day or two, but for the most part, right, it's pretty quick.
mhm. Um Shoot, I lost my train of thought. It was a really good question too.
It'll come back.
Uh have you ever had an experience that you weren't happy with when they made work for you, did the art for you, or an editor, or
I have not. I've been, knock on wood, fortunate enough to where all my experiences have been good.
we'll we'll try not to jinx you then.
Yeah, thanks.
I was trying to find some of your other covers. Do you have one you feel is like your least good cover?
Yeah, probably checkmate, and I just had a friend of mine do that.
I can't even find that on Amazon.
Yeah, that's because I took them all off. I took off all the novellas because they're going to be rewritten and mixed into the next novel.
Hmm.
And I thought the writing sucked, so I wanted to rewrite it, and I was embarrassed about it. So that's why I yanked them.
Is your Spear Garden cover that's currently up?
They are the
That's
same. That's the same company that did Beyond All Measure,
okay. I was gonna say it had kind of a very similar feel to it.
and he looks like Taylor Lautner, but with muscles.
Yeah, they even managed to get like the veins in on the muscles and everything. That's
Yeah,
did they have a model, or is that just a
I have no idea. they, I mean, they made the face. I told him, I said, if I were to cast him, it'd be Taylor Lautner, and they made him look like Taylor Lautner. So
Eraserhead says he makes some phenomenal stick figures.
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. How about copywriting your books? Do you
So, well, what a lot of people should know is that copyright protection exists really from the moment that an original work is fixed in I think of what they call it like a tangible medium. And that basically means that whenever your ideas are written down on paper or typed using a computer, for example, you don't have to do anything else. Your work is protected by copyright. Now, I have registered some, and if people go out there and look, there are services that'll do it, and people they'll charge like 150, $200. But if you go to, I think it's copyright.gov, I believe is the website. I can't, yeah, copyright.gov. Um, I want to say it's like 20, $25. It's not difficult to do.
okay? How long does it usually take for you?
Well, the only one that I've registered copywritten is Spear Garden, and I did that in 2012. So that was a while ago. But I
Oh,
I remember it was very easy.
okay. So none of the others are.
None of them are registered, but they're copywritten. They're protected under the copyright law, put it that way.
Oh, okay. So far says his works get submitted to the Copyright Office to be 100% certain. Is there a risk without that?
I don't know that there's a risk because, like I said, you are protected by copyright laws as soon as you put pen to paper. Um, but just having it registered might protect you if somebody takes your work and they decide they want to make a TV show about it or a movie or republish it under a different name. That might give you a little added layer of protection.
Mm-hmm. What about the covers? If the artist goes and makes somebody else a cover that's almost identical?
That I don't know. I've never even read anybody having that kind of a problem. Yeah, I don't know about that.
I don't know. There's, like you said, the names are so common. It seems like there's a lot of similar styles and similar genres and similar names, and mainly because publishers check off boxes and they're like, everything's going to look like this.
Yeah, and I mean, like there's multiple movies with the same name. There's books with the same names. I think my wife and I we watched a movie the other night that my daughter recommended, which was horrible. Um, but I started to do a search for it, and there were like 4 or 5 different movies, all with almost the exact same name or very similar name. Um, so it's really hard to come up with something super unique. I've never seen anything like Spear Garden though, but there's probably something called Beyond All Measure, or I don't know, maybe.
Spear Garden is a great title.
Thank you.
Have I read that one? I don't. That one does not sound familiar to me.
I don't know. You should. It's
I just.
really good.
I think you're right. I think it's the novellas I read before we kind of lost touch.
Yeah.
Um. And I'm trying to think.
And then I sent you Legacy too. I don't know if you ever got a chance to read that.
Oh, that's right. I didn't. I will be perfectly honest. It like scrolled far enough up in our chat that it was kind of an out of sight, out of mind. I will have to get on that this evening.
Alrighty.
Your timing is actually excellent because I just finished the last book that I was reading, so good timing. Wormy would like to know if you write in third person omniscient.
Yeah. You say so.
It was a very specific question. Wormy, I'm curious at the reason for the question. What is your favorite book outside the genre you were, or favorite books outside the genre Eraserhead, or the favorite genre outside the genre he writes for? He'll get to us in a moment.
Yeah. I really when I find something I like, I pretty much stick with it. I read almost entirely spy thrillers. I do like I used to before I started writing, I read a lot of fan fiction. Um, Star Trek books, Star Wars, Highlander. Big fan of Highlander.
Mm-hmm.
They had there's a lot of fan fiction Highlander books out there, so I read a lot of those. But yeah, mostly what I read are spy or military thrillers.
I guess that makes sense. It would be kind of strange if it turned out you hated spy thrillers and that's what you wrote.
Yeah.
Wormy, do you not like second person, or was it just a curiosity to go with the genre? I'm just being nosy. And if there are any other questions from the chat on either what it's like to publish, what it's like to write your first book, please throw them in the chat. We're kind of in the open discussion point of things. Yes. And if you are interested in the book, head over to the link. Like I said, I will put that in the description when I do the editing for the rewatch. Take advantage of that. I mean, heck, the price of shipping these days. Just having the shipping thrown is. Favre says he did the military thing. Can't read military literature because it's too real for him.
Oh, yeah, I can understand that.
Like you wouldn't want to read books about somebody doing computer. What was it? Computer programming sales or?
Yeah, that'd be pretty boring.
Adam says he wrote Adam, I didn't know you wrote screenplays. I'm not sure I knew you wrote. Period. Adam is our ghost with the most. All right. Unless anyone else has any questions, is there anything else you would like us to know, or anything else other than the book's coming out on April 1st? Go get it.
Yeah, I just love everybody's support, and you never know, discover a new author and pass it along to somebody else if you like it. And obviously, please, if you like it, please leave a review. That's really what helps me to be recognized, and look for even more new stuff in the future.
Yeah, that is the one downside, like you said, to self-publishing, is that getting the word out is really important. So even if you don't happen to personally like spy thrillers, if you know someone who does, please, I don't know, birthday presents or something, or just let them know it's out there. And same for all of my other guests as well, because this is something I'm really passionate about, is, getting the word out about people that might not otherwise get discovered. Yeah, Farf says getting people to review is so difficult.
It is. It is. I've got I did subscribe to an ARC program where I think I'm going to have maybe 40 to 50 readers, and hopefully they'll be leaving a review on the day that the book goes live on April 1st. So I'm hoping there'll be some good reviews out there for it.
Yeah, and that is the one thing about Amazon too, is that if you don't get enough reviews quick enough, they tend to kind of fade into the background. It's a little bit like YouTube.
Yeah.
In that way. Last shot. Any other questions from the chat? We would love to have some. I'm just gonna tease everybody. There are 13 people watching right now and only 12 likes. So one of you. Rachel says that she is going to recommend it to friends that love spy thrillers. So hopefully
Thank you.
that'll. Are you still taking people for the ARC program, or are you all full up at this point?
I can take people for the ARC if they're interested. Yeah, my ARC program that I signed up for starts March 17th, and they just have to give a review on April 1st when the book goes live.
Okay. Oh, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Wormy wants to know if you've ever written in any other genres.
So I dabbled in one. So you heard me mention earlier Legacy. And there was a writing competition that my writing partner, Henry Martin, suggested that we do. It was a 5,000 word competition, and you had to use the theme treasure hunt. And they said they suggested you think outside the box. So mine is actually it's a love story that takes place in World War II Germany, and it's 5,000 words. So but it spans multiple generations. It starts in World War II Germany and ends early 2000s, 2012 or so, just because of the age of the gentleman that the story's about. But so sure, you'll have to read it and let me know what you think. It's completely different from anything I've ever written. And then I am working on, this is kind of exciting. I mentioned I have a friend of mine who's an actor over in Scotland, and he's doing a television series right now. But he's actually written and had come up with some really super neat ideas for some screenplays. And so I've taken, he's written 3 pages of notes, and I've started to write that story. And I've got about in a couple chapters in, and his director that he's working with on his television show wants to take one of his stories, turn it into a screenplay, and put it on the big screen. So, with some luck, fingers crossed, this story that I'm writing of Sean's hopefully might make it to the big screen. We'll see.
Nice. So
Yeah.
you're not actually writing the screenplay, you're writing the story that might be converted into a screenplay.
Right. So my buddy Sean, he came up with the idea of the story, and he jotted it down on literally on pieces of paper, and he sent me photographs of the paper, and I'm kind of taking those ideas and creating the story, and then his director buddy will write the screenplay from it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Always always exciting to think about seeing your work up on the big screen.
Oh yeah. That would be cool.
Oh, I did mean I should have looked when I was on the Amazon site. Are your books available? I can talk. Available in physical copy or just in ebooks?
The my novels, The Royal Contingency, Spear Garden, and Beyond All Measure are all available as physical copies, and those would be the physical copies that I would sign and mail to you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, silly me. I should have asked the question the other way around. Are they available in ebooks?
Yes, they are.
And that you said you've taken down
The
the shorter
novellas.
the
Yeah,
yeah.
all but one, Intercept, and that one's a fun one. It's that one actually came true. That's a story that sort of, in a sense, kind of came true. I got the idea. I was actually in Johnsonville, Wisconsin. It was 40 degrees below zero. I was getting ready to go to the Johnsonville Sausage Company, and I'm reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about the Iranian nuclear guru who had fallen off the grid for 7 years and they thought he was dead. But all of a sudden, because of the new regime change in Iran, he was going to go back to head up their um, nuclear program. So I came up with an idea of somebody from Mossad wanting to kill him, and then a terrorist group wanting to kidnap him, and then Blake had to go and try to intercept that and bring him over to the U.S. for questioning. And I think 2 years ago, then the Mossad actually did assassinate the Iranian nuclear guru. They killed him. So and that I wrote that back in 2014, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of came true. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine it would feel weird. So
And then one part of Beyond All Measure, there's a scene where they're drinking some champagne, and the champagne is in a very odd old looking bottle, and the champagne came from a shipwreck that some divers discovered in the Baltic, from an 18th century shipwreck, and he paid, I don't know, 20 some $1,000 for this case of champagne. And I wrote that part of the book probably 2 years ago. And then this last summer, divers discovered an 18th century shipwreck and they brought up a case of champagne in the
I
Baltic.
remember I remember that scene. I thought that scene was a very nice touch. It's not directly story related, but it gave some kind of wonderful character development.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, I don't see any other questions, so why don't you tell us what you're up to? If you have other social media people should follow, Eraserhead can throw all those links back up again if you would, please, Supermod. And remind us, just for anyone who came in late, when your book is going to be published.
Yeah. So I can be found on X, formerly known as Twitter, as author_Thom Tate. I post on there. My website is tatescovertworld.com. And I am going to be releasing my latest novel, Beyond All Measure, on April 1st. All platforms.
Lord Toxic, you got here just as he's leaving. Do you have any questions for him? Yes, Lord Toxic is also an author and is going to be on this channel next month.
Fantastic.
Um, He does crime novels, I believe. I have not actually read his yet, so I still have to get to that one. All right, so I am the Eclectic Goat. I am here on Twitter. I refuse to call it X, and Discord as the Eclectic Goat. Let's see, where am I this week? Tomorrow I will be on Jacob Ironside's channel to talk about the X-Files. Wednesday I will be back here for Slice and Dice to talk about games that nobody's ever heard of. Sunday I will be on Sammy Threepeat's channel in other news. And then on Monday I will be here with Eraserhead for shows you've never seen. And excitingly, I finally got my underappreciated 90s television tech edition done. And so that literally will be dropping as soon as I sign off here, provided that YouTube has not in the last hour decided that there's something wrong with it. So that is all.
Well, Sherry, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. There we go. I was waiting for that. Oh, not the link I expected, but thank you anyway, Eraserhead. I hope everyone will pop over as soon as the song is done and watch the new video. And thank you for being here. And thank you, Thom, for joining us. Like I said, I've been really looking forward to this. So I think this is the first time I've ever actually spoken to you. So
yes.
All right. Good luck with your book sales, and we will see everyone on the other side.
Have a good night.
In a room lit by computer glows, a goat inspects, striking a pose. Mic in hand, she starts the show. Questions fly, authors disclose. Indy authors in the seat of fame. Tales of adventure or love untamed. Writers who deserve more acclaim, sharing their stories, joys and pain. Eclectic Goat, ask what's your dream. Chat, ask questions as they stream. A quirky quest through the unforeseen. Authors laughing, eyes agleam. Questions common and unique. Tale both modern and antique. Of writing and edits we will speak. Of the author's world, we'll take a peek. Books on high like paper towers. Stories blooming like summer flowers. Tales for readers to devour. Moments made in eclectic hours. Eclectic Goat, ask what's your dream. Chat, ask questions as they stream. A quirky quest through the unforeseen. Authors laughing, eyes agleam. Eclectic Goat, ask what's your dream. Chat, ask questions as they stream. A quirky quest through the unforeseen. Authors laughing, eyes agleam. Authors laugh, eyes agleam.